Welcome back. This is the last session. I've been here for 3 days. It's been called Fine Tuning, where we've been talking to some great writers and musicians about their creative lives. Our guest now is Rayya Elias. I'm saying it right? Rayya?
Rayya.
Rayya, okay. Rayya was born in Syria, raised largely in Detroit, where she began writing, performing songs, cutting hair, partying hard, eventually moving to her spiritual home of New York to pursue a music career, largely partying hard some more, and then a little bit more. And sometime later, she's here with a book about her life called Harley Loco. So please welcome Rayya Elias, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. I was going to say, you've tried your hand at a few creative outlets in your life, performing, hairdressing, songwriting. Did you feel a sense of success regarding your past when you wrote the book, Harley Loco? Did you feel like your life itself and all the events that happened within it somehow was your great work and it ended up in this book?
You know, it's funny because when I wrote the book, it really felt like, you know, I always called myself a Jane of all trades and a master at none. And the book sort of made me master myself. And so therefore I was able to take, it was the tipping point for all of it.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to take all those things and sort of do something completely different and finish it that encompassed writing and being alone and not being a scary drug addict and, you know, and all of it, and actually get it done and put it, I felt like it went full circle with it, yeah.
Because I was wondering, because you tried really hard to become a pop star, to get famous early on, and I thought, you know, did you ever feel a sense of regret that you had fallen out of that path and into drugs and things? I thought maybe that you took that with you for a while, you know.
You know, I think drugs were such a part of my past. Thank God I didn't become a pop star when I did, because I know I'd be dead. Like, that would be the only thing that would have killed me, not everything else. And there was a lot, and I've died 3 times, but the pop, being a star back then, at the ripe age in my 20s, I could not have handled that spiritually, emotionally, or in any other way, yeah.
I want to talk music for a minute. For a young girl in Detroit and an immigrant Syrian family, with all the cultural differences you must have felt in your household, do you remember the first American music that came onto your radar that you got attached to and inspired you? Was there something that just
Dude,
broke
Chubby
your world?
Checker.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand. There were 2 little 45s that my sister got, and she had them in, you know, we shared a room, and she had them in our nightstand. And I was like, what is this, Chubby Checker? I was like, twist, you know, do the twist, right? And I was just like, this is crazy making music, you know? And then I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then, you know, and I was only 8. But I remember the first single that I ever bought was George Harrison's My Sweet Lord. And I played the hell out of that.
How old were you then? Was this in your...
I would say maybe 11-ish, you know?
Because do you remember a love of music from your really early years when you were in Syria? Does your mind cast back there? It must have been such a different atmosphere for you.
I don't know about my love of music, but my love of performance.
Yeah.
Like when I was 5 years old, so I belonged to a Syrian Orthodox family, right? And we had to go to church all the time. And I remember, and I was probably a food addict way back then as well, at 5 years old. But I remember I told my mom there's a photo, and there was a panel of like archbishops, and I think the patriarch was there, and it was this big thing, and I was like, I really want one of the confessional cookies. And she said, you can't go up there. You know, I'm a little girl, right? I'm a girl, not a boy. And I'm like, but I want one. And so she told my dad, and he said, he thought I would never do it. And he said, you have to go up there and sing a song for the whole panel. And I was like, okay. So I went up there and I sang a song in Aramaic. Which was like the Our Father song, the Our Father hymn, I guess it's called. And I went and I sang it for the cookie, and they gave me the cookie. And I just remember like the exhilaration of having people watch while I performed, basically, I thought was so amazing.
Did that stay with you throughout your kind of adult life? I mean, you're performing right now. There's great stuff in your book about these kind of high pressure record label events, where, you're kind of, stuck up in front of a spotlight and told to kind of, show your wares.
To do the monkey dance?
Yeah, on your own too. That was a really touching part of the book, actually. Your bandmates kind of not being there for the first time, and you were just there in New York City on your own with all the suits around you, saying, "What do you got?"
Yeah, I mean, what was the question?
I'm not even sure how we got to that. I think we're just talking about you being on the stage, your comfort.
Yeah, I mean, my comfort level back then was, look, my comfort level only in the past recent years has gotten to a point where I can actually live in my skin. I can actually live in my skin and be okay with it. And I think the reason that I used drugs for so long was because I really wanted to be that person. I wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to be able to go out on stage and be, this dynamic person. And that really is where I disappear now. Like, I'm not conscientious of what I look like or what I sound like. I just sort of disintegrate into the moment of it. But back then, it was so much about, putting everything outside of me, inside of me, so I could feel comfortable outside of me.
It feels like a real life of extremes when I read the book, and on the subject of taking drugs, I mean, do you feel like you are happy now because you're completely straight, you haven't taken drugs in a long time or anything of the sort, but do you look back and think, I'm glad that that I get that to draw from, that I went so extreme with that? Or do you what if you'd been a moderate person and you were still kind of, just doing a little bit here and there? Are you happy for the extremes that you...
I'm extremely happy for the extremes. No, I have no regrets because I feel like, and it sounds really cliche, but that's what brought me here. That's what allowed me to write a book. That's what gives me gratitude every day. That's why, when I wake up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm here because, I look at a lot of people that I sort of came up with, and they had the sort of moderation that I always wished I'd wanted, but they're still doing that same crap, right? And they're still, and they wonder why things don't change in their lives, and it's because they haven't sort of stopped doing that stuff. Now, they'd never got to the point that I got, right? Which they always used to snub their noses at me, and I don't, I have no judgment on anybody. I'm just so grateful for every breath I take because, being here, there are no regrets. And I'm so like, this is life, man. I mean, it rips really deep. Yeah. And it's what I always was looking for. Yeah. I just thought I needed an external to give it to me.
In your days really trying to make it in music when you were, I guess, in your 20s and you first got to New York and doing a lot of creating, who were your heroes at this time? Because I don't remember reading the book and feeling like I remember what year it was even. It just feels like it's happened through the 80s into the 90s. And I was just thinking, who were your contemporaries at the time? What were your favourite songwriters? What were you like at this time?
Well, I mean, I'm a classicist, so I would always say David Bowie. David Bowie, Brian Eno, Dead Can Dance. At the time, it was just like I started playing music because I loved, like, the Stones and Pink Floyd and Traffic and, all the old classics. But, man, when I heard David Bowie for the first time, and I will never forget, I saw him on Saturday Night Live with Klaus Nomi in this freaky thing, right? And he came out and I was like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I was like, I want that. I want to be that. I want to experience that. I want to live that. I want to everything that.
Did you begin imitating people like Bowie when you were getting creative? I know you were kind of drawn to the synthesizer and performance art because you were really hands-on in terms of everything from visually as well around your creative life.
Absolutely. And the other ones were like in Detroit. It was like, I was in Detroit, so it was like Iggy Pop, and so there were a lot of things to draw off, but yeah, my performance art was definitely influenced by, David Bowie, Brian Eno, Roxy Music, all those guys. Like, I just wanted to paint myself and put myself in every kind of crazy costumes and paint naked people on stage and have them dance for me.
And was that a form of escape, or or were you also drawn to get as far into American culture as you could at the time? I'm just trying to paint a picture of you at the time.
No, it's kind of weird because I always felt like I was never really American enough nor Syrian enough to be either. I was really drawn to the Brits.
Yeah.
I was drawn to, all those guys that came, Susie and the Banshees, The Cure. What? I was like, that's what I wanted. I like the British invasion was what really got me. The Sex Pistols, they couldn't play anything. And they were out there just making such a great time. And I, as an audience member, as a fan, I went to my first U2 show at a place called Harpo's, that was a biker bar in Detroit, in downtown Detroit, and they couldn't play. There were 50 people in the audience, and they couldn't play, and I was like, these guys rule. I was like, or like, my first Bauhaus show, there were like 20 people, and Peter Murphy asked me to use my mascara, and I was like, oh my God, and they couldn't play, and I was like, I can do that. I can totally do that, because I can't play, as you'll see today. And, but I knew that I could get up there and lose myself in a way that I could also entertain just by losing myself and sort of feeling the crowd, like closing my eyes. And it didn't matter, whether we could play at first or not together, but as long as we really liked each other as artists and we hung out and we were having a great time, we eventually learned how to play together.
Has that stayed with you up till now? Is that kind of punk rock era your richest source of musical inspiration, and you still kind of approach, if you're writing a song, it's that kind of aesthetic that you go for?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know how to play this. I've been playing it for a year. They told me I had to take a musical instrument on tour with me when I wrote my book, and I was like, I can't take a keyboard. I'm going to look like an Asian person in the subway, playing like freaking, I don't mean to sound, that's not like, or like just some, person like, with a backtrack singing and dancing, with a monkey. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I chose 3 to 4 songs of mine that meant a great deal to me that I'd written, and had produced in a studio. And I bought a guitar, and I sort of taught myself how to play the songs. And I stripped them down to where I even told the sound engineer, I'm like, keep the guitar down, dude. Just raise my voice, because that's where it's at. So just to dive in head first and be like, it doesn't matter. As long as the vibe is there and the message is there, I don't think it's only punk rock. I think it's art. It's just like taking a chance and hoping that the audience is going to go for the ride with you. Like, it doesn't have to be this amazing, perfect, Frank Zappa thing, right?
Do you remember the first song you wrote? Was that, or the circumstances around it? Did you just decide that's where I'm going to go, so I'm going to go make a song?
Oh, I did.
Or was it, yeah.
I did. It was bad, but I still loved it. It was called Crawler. And I remember I had my first synthesizer, which was like a Moog, not even a monopoly. It was just a Moog-like thing that you could only press one note at a time. So I played this thing that went da na 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 na. It was like, crawler, crawl on me, yeah. Crawler, set me free. Crawler, crawl on me now, 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 now. Wow!
What's the crawler?
It was everything.
Sure.
It was like I wanted everything to crawl on me.
Are you able to play anything from that initial era where you first were writing songs?
I do. I have one. It's a 3 chord like thing that I wrote for my first boyfriend, my only boyfriend. I'm a lesbian. So you know how old it is, but But it's funny because I was gonna practice it the other day, and I was like, oh no, I'll never play that again. So I didn't. But if you want me to play
Are you
it
up
for you,
for
I
it?
will.
I think that'd be great.
I'll play it. All
let's
right,
do it.
all right. Like I said, it's only three chords, but just shows you how bad we were. But it was good. So this was written sort of in the vein that you know, in the 80s where like you swung your arms around, and it sort of had a New Order sort of like that vibe, but it wasn't nearly as good. As as you posted the other day, when your taste is really good but you can't quite get there, this is that kind of thing. So this is called Nothing Matters. Looking in your eyes, I feel the fear of eternal emptiness, knowing nothing could fill the spaces of my mind. It's easy to say as we lie here, spindling webs around each other, flies dead in the hallways. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing. Looking through your eyes, I feel a fear that bellows deep inside, knowing nothing you do can satisfy. It's easy to say as we lie here, spindling webs around each other, flies dead in the hallways. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing. Life is lurking on the edge. Death is on the other side, smiling and waving. Come into this sea of madness. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. Nothing. Thank you. That's from the crypt, man.
Thanks for doing that. I want to bring up, there's a paragraph in your book I remember you talking about your increasing heroin intake and making a point that now, I don't remember it exactly, but that you were living the life like your heroes, like Lou Reed, like Keith Richards, you know. And do you think, did the perception of your heroes have a large influence on your lifestyle? And do you feel, did you buy into that myth too much? How do you look back at that now?
Dude, I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. I mean, you know, I'm a Syrian woman who left Detroit because I needed to come out as a lesbian, and I really wanted to play music, and I had no sort of gauge as to who I was because I had no idea who I was. And so when I went to New York and saw close up these people that I admired for so long in the art scene, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and you know, and Warhol, and you know what was going on at the factory, and my best friend at the time, Tommy Robertson, who's now passed, who was in this band called Polyrock, who Philip Glass had produced, and it was this amazing band. And seeing all those guys at CBGB's, I was like, they're doing it, so, and it looks like fun. You know, and the thing was that I didn't know that I didn't have to do that in order to become who I wanted to become, I just thought it was part of the deal, because it was everywhere back then. Yeah.
New York's changed a lot since the days when you arrived there.
Boy.
I've thought about this when you were describing. Was it a scene? I read your book about a month ago. With camping in Washington Square Park, or
You mean being homeless?
being homeless
In Tent City, which was Tompkins Square Park. Yeah.
describing scoring drugs on blocks I imagine are a lot safer these days. And Manhattan to me seems really quite family friendly. A lot of the place,
It is. I mean, it is very family friendly. I mean, I think it's always been family friendly. I mean, there were a lot of families in Tent City that were living homeless. No, but it has changed, and it has changed a lot. And I think a lot of it is for the good. I mean, look, there's a place for everybody and everything, and I don't. It's just part of my history. That's not a history that I condone for anybody, but it was part of mine, and I do embrace it with everything.
Have you been happy to watch New York evolve? Does it just feel a part of its story to you?
It does, as we all do. Yeah. I mean, as we all do, and we must in order to get to the place. I would like to see it pull back a little bit, because I think that, the space for artists like me, people have to go to Detroit now again, which is a great place to leave, and now it's a great place to go to, right? Because there's no room; it's too expensive in New York.
So, in some ways, then, when you're writing the book, did it feel like you were someone painting a picture of New York at the time in your life in the 90s and that kind of thing? It becomes a historical document. Did you feel proud of that when you were doing it? Was that in your mind? Was it great to just put down on paper?
Look, I'm always proud of that city. I mean, that city, and it has been my greatest enemy and my best friend and my, greatest nemesis and my lover and everything. And so to document it, I feel like it lives and breathes a life of its own. And so being able to document it at that time, from my perspective, was an honor. It felt like a real honor. And it's funny because the first draft that I did of the book, it wasn't quite there. And I had read Patti Smith's Just Kids.
Yep.
And I was like, I had read it before I even started writing the book. And there was something about that book that just, that grabbed, that clutched onto my heart so desperately and deeply. And not because I was such a huge fan of Patti, which I am, or Robert, which I am, but the way that she breathed life into even Pratt Institute out in Greenpoint, it was like, oh my God. And so after, I wrote my first draft, I read it and I thought, there's something that's not really developed here that I really need to develop. And it's a character. And that was the New York character. And so I had to go back in and really, really dig deep and try to remember through the haze of what it was. But, that's ingrained in me.
Because you mentioned to me as well that there was the chance of it being turned into something on film or for TV. This is the book we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm on a third rewrite for hopefully, the gods please hear me. I'll put it out there, make it stick. Hopefully, as a series for a cable television program, and I'm hoping, and it's called Alphabet City right now, which I think is bloody genius. And so yeah, I want to do that. I have not seen a show about the 80s with a female anti-hero, drudging through the streets like Clint Eastwood with a shotgun. I'm not going to swear here because somebody yelled at Sammy yesterday because I was swearing because there were kids. The guy who I did the thing with, but yeah, going around and Breaking Bad all over the place.
You said trudging. There was a lot of trudging going on. It's like, there's so much of it is you just kind of waking up after some, crazy moment and trying to piece it together.
Yes.
Because you were talking about the haze just before. I wanted to briefly mention songwriters were known for adding poetic license to songs, romanticizing things to make a more interesting track. in your memoir, did you ever find yourself, maybe because of the haze, painting a picture of events to suit the drama of the book? Did you feel, or did you feel in debt to yourself to keep it perfectly factual, being so much drugs taken in the bush?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I didn't write the book for anyone but me. So when I wrote the book, I had no idea it was going to be published. So I had no idea at all. I didn't even think that I could write it. I didn't think that I could get it out. And so when I did, I was like, I'm trying to be as honest with myself. Now, through the haze, I may have seen things my way. I've had one ex-lover come up to me and say, we didn't meet that way. We met this way. And I'm like, I don't remember that. I remember meeting in a three-way, And I was like, and she was like, but no. And I was like, oh, well, remind me. And she's like, no, I remember I came with somebody whose hair you cut. And I was like, I must have been more under when I was cutting your friend's hair, because I don't remember that. I just remember this. And she was, oh, that's all right then.
Yeah.
I was like, but I did write it with as much truth because it was for myself. It was sort of a cathartic experience that I was trying to get out of me, just so that I could.
Yeah. On the subject of writing, I mean, it's often seen writing a book as like a highly learned kind of profession, or at what point did you begin thinking writing a book was something you could do? Was it intimidating to you at first, or how did it come about?
Her. That woman sitting there, okay. Elizabeth Gilbert, was she. I
didn't know that, but I actually brought a quote I read in the paper of yours that I read yesterday, which I thought was good when we're thrown here. You've got to give your mind a job to do, or else it will find a job to do, and you won't like the job that it finds for itself. And
exactly.
I like that a lot. Do you agree
yeah,
with that
exactly.
sentiment?
Well, we'd been friends for a long time, and I was her hairdresser for a long time, and she, she'd heard all my stories, and she'd watched me make films, and she'd watched me go in the studio, make music, and finally she just said, look, you're barking up the wrong tree here. Why don't you just sit down and write a book? And I was like, what does it take to write? And she goes, you sit behind a desk, you sit your ass down, and you write. And I'm like, seriously? Yeah. No way. And basically it was on a huge, she prompted me, she urged me, she believed in me. And so therefore I really believed in myself. And it took me 3 years. I mean, it was no easy task.
I think I saw in an interview where you were talking about the writing process. You were saying, it kind of felt you're writing just like you talk aloud. But I guess because your story was so interesting, that must have just felt very refreshing. You could just go down that path and just basically purge everything,
Yeah. I mean, because I would say, I would show it to people. I'd show it to Liz and to my editor, and I'd say, I'm not a writer. I am a storyteller. And they're like, dude, this can't be learned. This can't be taught like the way that like I write the way that I talk, literally. And they're like, all the grammar and all that, like, that's our job. That's the editor's job. Just put it down there and let us, like, sort of clean it up a little bit.
Yeah. I'll give you one more question. It'd be nice to get another song in, another couple of songs, because we're cruising through. I was gonna say, you've been to prison a number of times, and we're talking, at the moment you've been a writer. I'm talking about purpose. In the book...
That's prison.
In the book, you talk about becoming a hairdresser in jail. It's one of the great kind of scenes or chapters in the book, I think, where you're describing your kind of finding a role within jail, and the other girls' acceptance of you and the way that everyone handles each other in jail. Did that help you coming off drugs, the role of hairdresser? How important is having a sense of purpose to you, like being the hairdresser and having that role? Because before that, perhaps it felt like in the book you'd just drift in, you'd just one day to the next. But was that something that pulled you out of it? Is that an important thing?
Well, I think hairdressing has been my best and worst enemy, and my best friend and worst enemy, because I knew that I could do that hands down, no matter what, whenever, however. So I guess for the 7 years I was trying to get clean, it was the thing that really damaged me because I cleaned up so quickly. You know, you go into a rehab, you go into a detox, you get clean, you come out, you feel great, start cutting hair, making a ton of money, and you're like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm great. I don't have a problem." And then you fall down the rabbit hole again, right? So during that time, it really was sort of my worst enemy. In jail, it was my best friend because, you know, it got me through at $12 a week and doing all the the Latin Queen's girlfriend's hair. They loved me. You know, I got everything handed to me in prison because I was able to sort of give them Vogue hair, you know, stylish hair. Like everybody wants to look beautiful, whether you're in prison or on Rodeo Drive, right? Like you want to look like the cover of a magazine. And I just happened to be able to do that for people in prison. And so within a week of being there, I was like, you know, like a star, you know, and it was great. But, you know, when I finally had my own moment of sort of, I'm never going back, I've taken this as far as it can go. Then hair became truly my best friend because I was able to, again, clean up really quickly, but hold on to it and actually build a life rather quickly, you know, and really sort of have this blessing of a trade to sort of help me to make enough money to start making music again and start being creative again.
It became that in the book, didn't it? Every time there was kind of, it got serious, it kind of became the starting point again, was like this trade that you had where you kind of would begin the process of finding yourself again by kind of taking
scissors in the back pocket, you know, scissors in the back pocket, cutting hair for $5 at a homeless shelter. And then, you know, within 2 weeks I was working at, you know, Vidal Sassoon or Bumble and Bumble. I mean, it was just insane.
It was also the thing that took you to New York in the first place as well.
Absolutely. I bow down to it. I mean, it's the only thing, you know, I always talk about never feeling like the person that belongs on a stage anywhere. But when I have scissors in my hand and I'm cutting hair, that's one of the places where I truly feel like I can do no wrong.
Do you still do it?
I do it, you know, there's about 20 people in my life and old clients that will never let go. So I go in to a spot once a month and I take care of them. And I do it for Lizzie G and, you know, my partner. And people that are really special to me. It's a joy.
I guess like Elizabeth was saying, you've got to have that kind of purpose or that outlet. So maybe, you know, there's always the theory that everyone needs something, and most people, even the most cynical of people, probably go home at night and they're probably in their best mood when they're just cooking up the stir fry, you know, because it becomes that thing. And, you know, was hairdressing that thing for you?
It was that, and sitting and, you know, and writing a song. Yeah.
I'd like to, can we get in another song?
Yeah, totally.
What are you going to play for us?
I'm going to play, if I can get this thing to sit up right here. All right. May drift, but who cares? I'm going to play the song called Loaded Gun. And it's a song, since we've been talking about back the life and all that, it's a song that I wrote about actually letting go and leaving that life behind. So it's called Loaded Gun. Woke up, got out of bed, dragged on my last cigarette, wondering why I wasn't dead. Looked at my arms, Try to feel the skies. Try to see their faults. Try to heal, 'cause I don't wanna go there. Don't wanna go there again. To you I say, I'm gone. To you I say, to let me live this life I found. To you I say, gone. To you I say, la 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 la. I thought that you were beautiful, or was I just another fool? And you felt beautiful, like a loaded gun. The heart of a song, it's cancer in the lungs. Deliver the lines, you're out of time. You're cold as a stone, you're all alone. You've lived like a king with broken wings. To you I say, I'm gone. To you I say, to let me live this life I found. To you I say, I'm gone. To you I say, to let me live, let me live. To you, to you, to you, to you, to you, and you, and you. To you, to you, to you, and you, and you, and you, and you. To you, to you, to you, to you, to you, to you, to you. I'm gone. I'm gone.
Thanks, Rayya. The heart of a song is cancer in the lungs. That is extreme as well.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to ask a few more questions. We'll probably sneak another song in as well. But we've got one of those roaming mics, so I'm sure Rayya's not here very often. So if anyone wants to ask a question, just throw your hand up and we can come over to you and give you the mic. Or not, you don't have to use the mic either. But if anyone has a question, just throw your hands in the air. I know late last year you were in the process of having a handful of songs recorded or in the works. I was watching an interview with you and you were talking about a group of people that you trusted and admired, maybe some producers, and you're all working together on some of your songs. Maybe they were all putting input in. That was about 6 months ago, so I just wanted to check in and say, any movement on that? Have you had time to continue to work on your music?
Yeah, actually, I just finished recording and mixing a couple songs. Well, like three. These brilliant women, and this book has brought so much to me because when I was in Detroit doing my first sort of book launch at the Detroit Institute of Arts. The drummer for Kid Rock, right? So she's one of the best drummers in the world. She's incredible, Stephanie Eulenberg, and she had never. Her friend dragged her to this book thing, right? And she came and within 10 minutes she was leaning in because at first she was like, "Oh, this is going to be a drag," right? And she was leaning in, and so I ended up getting an email from her a couple weeks later, and she said, "I haven't read a book in 6 years, and I read this book, and I want to make music with you, and I'm thinking about producing." And so I was like, "Okay." And she said, "I'll fly you to Detroit." I'm like, "Okay." So I went to Detroit and started working on a few songs that she was producing with me. And then I thought, how fun would it be to get her and my regular producer, who's produced Rufus Wainwright and Blondie, and we've been friends for years and years, and Barb Morrison, who's just this phenomenal musician and producer, and we'd done this song and many other songs together since I first got clean. She was the first one that heard this one song of mine and said, she calls me Pickle. I don't know why, but she's just like, "Pick, you gotta get in the studio, man." And I'm like, "No, I'm not ready to do that." And she was like, "Yeah, you're ready and you're going in." So we went in and recorded like a group, like 9 songs together, which only a couple have been like released on iTunes. But
are they fleshing it out like you've got the full band?
oh
kind
yeah,
of
the
treatment?
full. Oh yeah, the full thing. I mean, this is like, dude, this is like stripping it down to like a shitty guitar player, But I just wanted to make this very organic. But yeah, no, it's full blown and it's awesome.
When you're working on a song now, how does it feel compared to when you were at that first kind of fertile period in Detroit where you guys were coming up with music and you really wanted to be famous and you're pulling it all together? Time moves pretty quick, but do you feel, is it much the same? Can you just sit down and work and does it come to you
Now
differently?
it's an earworm. Now it's an earworm.
What's that?
It's an earworm that, like, if I'm walking around and there's a melody or there's something that just eats me up, and I'm like, get out of my head, get out of my head. Or I'll sit down and write something off the cuff, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a great lyric. That's how it starts for me now, and it's never like, oh, I'm gonna go in and record. It's always like, because I live in a church,
Yeah.
right? So it's like these acoustics, and so I start playing, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And then, so now I do it for me, and then when I get it to a place where the structure I feel is good, then I'm like, okay, now I can take it into the studio and really show it to somebody and work on it.
Yeah. Is it a labored process for you, a song, or you strike me as someone who could probably?
It's
purge it
not
quickly?
labored, and I know that, and I never feel like they're good enough, but I don't care anymore. Like, the only labor is keeping them in.
Why do you feel like they're not good enough a lot of the time? Is that
Because it's the way I am, man. I never feel like I'm good enough, I mean, I'm okay. I'm cool with myself, but like I was just listening to Abby May, and I was like, oh my God, her voice, and I'm watching her play, and I'm like, oh my God, her playing, and I'm like, cool, and I got my shit, like I just do. I don't. It's not a matter of I don't care anymore. I have to do it because I have to do it, So wherever that takes me, whether it's out into the world or in my bathroom, or playing for my friends, it's fine with me. Like, I've made total peace with
you
it.
still seem bold enough to give your projects to the world. And when you do your recording, are you planning to make an album and release it and give it away as well?
We are. Well, right now we're sort of getting this collection of songs together because hopefully, if we do get the show, I really want to pitch the music, right? Yeah. But neither here or there. That is definitely coming out. Yeah. They're really excited about it, and so am I.
And does anyone have a question yet? So, I was going to ask you about literature as well. Do you remember any particular particularly important books in your life that may have inspired you or made a lasting impression on you as a writer?
Well, I mean, there's always, Catcher in the Rye, and I was a huge fan of Charles Baudelaire. Like, I read Baudelaire all the time when I was really out there, I read that all the time. I remember picking up Geek Love and just wanting every one of my friends to read it, because it was just so weird. And I just thought, how cool is it that somebody can actually write about this stuff and not get put in prison,
When you were really out there and you were reading stuff like that, I mean, at that time as well, were there long periods where you would not have had any creative inclination at the time, or did you still get little song pieces and things coming to you during times of heavy drug use? Because you strike me as someone who was receptive that whole time, was still living that dream despite being way down there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I just was cleaning out a huge box, and I found these journals like while I was out there, and dude, they are so dark. But there's some poetry. I mean, it's not poetry; it's just like writing. But now I look at it and I'm like, damn, that was kind of all right, And I'm like.
Did that help when you were writing the book? Was it like a journal diary type thing that you could delve back into?
I didn't find that. I didn't find that until literally 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
When
so
I was cleaning out.
You kept that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one more question on the subject of drugs. I was reading recently as well. I just want to know your thoughts on, if things could have helped you more, or your idea on drug laws as well. I mean, places like Venezuela have decriminalized drugs with emphasis being placed on recovering addicts, putting them in more inclusive environments, focusing on finding occupations and community for them instead of jail. You've been through the American jail system quite a lot. What are your thoughts to finish off on? Could things have been different for you, or are you glad of the tough love that you kind of received?
Oh, I'm extremely, extremely grateful for the tough love. I'm very mixed on this because I always say, had it not been for, the Clinton administration having giving huge money to people like me that could have gotten into rehabs and detoxes and food stamps and all of that, I would probably be dead, And then on the other side of it is that I feel like I would have never worked.
Yeah.
You could have given me any job and told me, I would have been like, are you kidding me? Why would I show up to a job when it was free and legal to go and shoot drugs? I mean, like, who's going to be crazy enough to do that? So I don't feel like decriminalizing extreme drugs. Now, I have a really strong feeling about not putting people in prison with actual criminals that are only drug addicts, because I was there, and I remember when the woman saved me, she said, Rayya, you're not a criminal, you're a drug addict, and I'm looking at your life here, at your rap sheet, and you shouldn't be in prison for 4 years, which is where they wanted to put me. And she saved me, She understood, and she took me out, but not without a price of, you have to do this, and you have to be in a locked ward, basically, in a women's prison association program that deals with drugs. I fully believe in rehabilitation, but I don't believe, if you haven't killed anybody or bopped anybody over the head and stolen their stuff, well, maybe I should have been there. No, I'm teasing. But if you're a drug addict, you don't belong in prison. You belong somewhere where you can get help. And the only way you're going to get it is through tough love. Trust me. Only way you get it is if you want it.
When you were heavy into drugs in Manhattan, did you feel clamped down upon? Did you feel like you were always on hiding from authorities? Was it a hard life to get away with at the time? I'm trying to paint a picture.
Not at first. At first, it was so easy. And then Rudy Giuliani came in, the fascist, and he did a lot of really great things for the city, I have to say now. But back then, man, it was like, like one time, and it didn't matter what you did, you were definitely going in.
Because you touch on going to jail kind of to one place in the book, but I'm sure I've heard of you saying that you'd been to a number of
Well, there was one
correctional?
place that I went to 14 times in one year. And that's what I mean. Before Rudy was in, it was like, oh, you did this. Oh, all right, here you go. Time served. And so, but after he came in, he really, really cleaned it up. And I mean, I appreciate that now. But back then, it was like, oh my God.
And what do you mean cleaned up? To paint a picture for people not
Well,
been there.
it was like, like it didn't matter whether you were a user or a dealer. Like you were going in, and you were getting the maximum. And so there were like they were basically, it was called pressure point. And anytime you were walking down the street, a van would pull up behind you, like a regular marked van, plainclothes cops, and they would literally take everybody, throw them up against the wall, strip search you basically right there. I mean, it was fascist.
Is that the scene in your book where there's you kind of have some cops come and get involved, and you've got a bag of kind of stolen property in the boot?
Oh no, that's a different scene.
It's a different scene.
Yeah, but pressure point, like literally, and it didn't matter whether you were there buying a soda, or whether you were there buying candy, or whether you were actually doing what they thought you were doing. They literally just swept. We call them pressure point sweeps, and they would sweep everybody in, and then they'd figure it out later.
What about now when you're walking down somewhere in the Lower East Side? Do you see, having been there, remnants of that world still existing?
Oh, yeah. It's funny because I have two nephews that live in New York City. One's 27, one's 35. And we go, it's my neighborhood. I love it down there. We go down there to eat a lot. And so just a couple weeks ago, we were cruising by, and this plainclothes car pulled up, and they threw these two guys up against the bodega. And the guys, but they were being like really very mild. And my nephews were like, what the hell's going on here? And I'm like, dudes, it's a sweep. Like, come on. I'm like, probably drug dealers or drug addicts, and they've been probably following them for a while. And they were like, we never see that, because it just doesn't really exist. But yeah, when you know what's going on, you just see it. I see it.
And do you think you're a New Yorker for life?
Absolutely. Pardon the pun, but it is in my veins, dude. And it's not going anywhere. I love that city so much. Although I do live in a beautiful church house in New Jersey, but I've got a spot in New York that I can't imagine giving up.
We're coming to the end, so before we play another song, I'd ask if anyone does have a question. It's right now, if that's the time. We'll go on right down here. I'll come to you as well. One second, because we can just get a bit of volume on it. If you're okay with that. Thank you.
Yesterday you were talking about not squandering your not squandering your sorrow, and I think that you've got to a point where you've claimed your ground and you've claimed your difficult experiences to bring a lot of life to yourself and to others. Was there a pivot point for you, or was that an accumulative process of trying to pull together and gradually strengthening yourself and claiming yourself and your ground?
That's a great question. There was about a 2-year sort of progression, and it was a process. And when I first got clean, I really didn't know who I was, what that all meant. I knew it was done. It was a gentle nudge that happened to me after everything that you read or may not read, but after everything that happened, and there was a gentle nudge, and I knew that I would never, ever go back there again. But it took me 2 years to sort it all out and be like, what was that all about, Never did I have the pity, because I knew that everything I'd made wholeheartedly by choice. None of it, I was never a victim, ever, 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 nor had I ever claimed to be while I was going through it. It was always like, yeah, I'm doing this, But when I got clean, it was like, why was I like that? Like, who was that person? And so it took me a while to sort of figure it out. But once I figured out, like, not why, but that it didn't really matter, because now I was here, and there's this sort of overwhelming gratitude of just having made it, and then I was like, it doesn't matter. It's just part of my story. Life's just a story. Like, it doesn't, and you can make it whatever you want. And so from now on, this is what I'm going to make it, And so just like the way that I dove into everything in that really destructive way, I thought, I'm just going to dive into everything in a really constructive way. And so it was a choice, really. It was a choice.
We're going to take one more question up the back here.
Hi, thank you for your talk. That was great. I have a question about, you talked about the artists moving from New York to Detroit. How do you see the future of New York as in terms of the character of New York? Do you think it's going to fundamentally change? Do you think its center will move, or do you think it's just a phase and it will kind of come back to being that sort of center for artists again?
I honestly believe that everything is a phase, and I do believe that it's a phase because just 2 weeks ago, the new mayor just declared all these properties, right, that he was reducing all the rents and hoping to move artists into these buildings in the financial district and on the Lower East Side. And I thought, okay, he's a little bit of a clown, but he's cool. He's a cool guy, and I like him. But I thought, okay, here's somebody who is pulling back the reins a little bit, and maybe loosening up that tight suit that New York has been wearing for a while. And I really believe that in any movement, it's like once we bust out of, once the suit gets tight enough, right, it's got to explode. Like, there's no more room. So I really feel like it will explode, and there will be room, not in Brooklyn, I'm talking about Manhattan, for the artists to come back. It's just gonna take a lot longer because there's so much money, and then I thank God for that, because I sell real estate. Come on, I'm like a walking contradiction.
I think that's all we've got time for, but we might squeeze in a song before you go. That would be great. And I just want to say thanks for coming up here. It's a great place to sit right here and just talk about music and creativity.
Yeah.
Harley Loco. It looks like there's, I think you're going over to the bookstore as well, over there.
Yeah.
It's a great book. It stayed with me really visually,
Thank
since
you.
the month ago that I read it. So thanks for coming up here and talking to me.
And I love your music.
Oh, thanks a lot.
I told my partner I was downloading all of it. All of it. It's so good. It's so my aesthetic. It's awesome.
It's you and my mum then.
So this is I'm going to play this only for the second time. I played it yesterday, but it's a new song that I am recording, that I did record with Steph Eulenberg and Barb Morrison. The two, I got them in a room, and I'm going to play it here, and it's really stripped down, but here it goes. And I wrote it for my mom, actually, who happened to die when I was still out there and never got to really be present. So it's just a little ode. It's been a while since I saw your face. It's been some time. Pain will fade away. But when I put a hat on to hush the voices in my head, when I put a hat on together. When I put a hat on, reminds me of you. Once in a while, I hear your broken English. And then sometime I see your faded lipstick. But when I put a hat on to keep it all together, I put a hat on, yeah, I put a hat on. Swallowing my quiet desperation was the only way. Looking for someone to call my own is where I'll stay. I don't wanna hide, follow my pride, open my arms for you. Give me some time, stay by my side. I'm here for you. I don't wanna hide, follow my pride, open my arms for you. Give me some time, stay by my side. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Thanks so much.